Hello, hello. Today's a fantastic day to inspire and potentially scare some lives. I am Jaime Raygoza, your host, and welcome to the Finding the Unicorn in You podcast. It is spooky season, and to honor my favorite holiday, we are introducing the masked unicorn. Join me as we continue on our weekly journey to help you find and connect with your inner unicorn. But be vigilant, as this month we will seek out to discover the difference between a masked unicorn and a true unicorn. Now, without further ado, I hope you enjoy this week's show. Today we're going to do a little bit of a physical exercise. Stand up and start stretching your arms all the way up. Stretch them to the side, to the other side. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your body as much as possible. Just let all of those endorphins out and all of those good feelers, and just shake your body. Statistics show that the more you start shaking your body, it actually reduces your sense of anxiety, your stress, and it really releases good energy in your body. Wiggle your toes, move your legs, bend down, stretch, but just do something for about 15 to 30 seconds. Just really shake. And if you have nothing in your head that you can do, then literally just shake your body. Shake it for 30 seconds, set a timer, and you will feel so amazing at the end after just shaking your body and letting all of that movement out, because you're releasing all of that tension that your body's been storing. I know it sounds silly, but it's very effective. Go ahead and do that at least once a day whenever you're feeling stress. And if you feel embarrassed, go into the bathroom, go in the outside of the building, and then just do it. Shaking your body, it's going to be feeling really good. Well, I hope you did this activity. If you didn't, only you know. I mean, I hope you did it, but you will know if you didn't do it. But thank you so much for doing this, and enjoy this week's show. Hello everyone, spooky season, so we are getting into the groove of things. Today we have a very special guest. She is a fantastic unicorn. She not only is a unicorn herself, but as her career, she shapes other unicorns to be better leaders and fantastic individuals overall, to really be people-based. And I'll let her talk more about herself. So here's Alex Young.
Thank you so much, Jaime. I am so excited to be here today. I mean, whenever it is. We're on different time zones, and I love that so much, that the beauty of the internet, that we can connect no matter where we live these days. So thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I even wore my ghost earrings just for you for spooky season.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with your career and going all of this in consulting?
Yeah, definitely. Well, like you said, I'm Alex. I live in Minnesota. So if you hear my lovely accent, I apologize, but I kind of like it. So I live in Minnesota with my husband and my two little boys. I have a first grader and a preschooler. I'm in the thick of it right now of motherhood. I'm a leadership coach. I work with individuals and organizations and help people be better leaders by teaching them the principles and foundations of leadership, and also kind of inspiring them to be a better leader, but also kind of uncover some of those blocks that might be holding people back from really living the life that they want to lead, a life that's really aligned with their core values. I do that in a variety of different ways. I work individually with clients. I work coaching a group program. I have workshops. I speak. It's kind of a wide variety that makes up my business. It hasn't always been this way. When I first started entering the workforce after college, my very first job was as a leadership consultant. It was only for a year. I worked for my sorority. I traveled all around the United States and Canada. And it was like my dream job. I got to do leadership presentations and work with leaders. And who knew, but at the time, like literally was coaching. But I had deferred law school to do that job. And so when that ended, I went to law school and became a lawyer. I am no longer a lawyer. So along the way, I just really felt like this wasn't right. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling. I'm doing what I think people think I should be doing, but it also doesn't feel like I'm being the most authentic version of myself. Halfway through law school, I had this sort of like realization. I'm like, ooh, maybe being on Law and Order is not like true life and not exactly what I wanted to. I literally wanted to be a criminal prosecutor. And I had this sort of like epiphany during law school that what I really wanted to do was to build an organization, a nonprofit that supported girls in leadership. Like I really truly believe that there just wasn't a lot for girls in my area who, when girls enter middle school and high school, their confidence just plummets. And so what we wanted to do was take all this love of leadership that I had and share that with girls in middle school and high school. So I formed a nonprofit, and I still graduated law school. I became a lawyer. And then I wanted to get more nonprofit experience, because one of the things about me is I am just a lifelong learner. I'm so curious. And I'm like, okay, well, I have this organization that isn't big enough to support me as like a full-time staff. So I'm fresh out of law school and need to have a job. I started working for a nonprofit. I worked for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society as a fundraiser. And then I also was teaching at the law school, running the nonprofit clinics. When I started to dabble back into teaching, I just loved it. I was teaching people how to be a fundraiser. I was teaching people how to like run nonprofits. And then my dream job became available. I say this, like every job is a dream job, because there's always something like you can find that just makes it so exciting. But there was this opportunity to go work for a company that was just getting a corporate university off the ground. So they were really growing fast. They were kind of in this like startup feel, and they wanted to provide learning and development for all of their staff, but they needed someone to run it. I switched gears from law school to nonprofits, or lawyering nonprofits, into learning and development and being on an HR team. And I just loved it. It really was everything of being able to focus on leadership and teach classes and workshops. And all along the way, I sort of became the like go-to for staff engagement, and people would always be coming into my office to like talk to me about what's going on, what they're struggling with. And looking back, I didn't realize it then, but I was really like the coach. I was the person that people came to sort of talk things out, and I'd ask questions and they'd leave and go about their day, but like inspired to change and inspired to really like look at themselves and kind of say, oh yeah, you know, that's maybe where I'm struggling, or that's where I have an opportunity to do something different. And then the pandemic hit, which I feel like so many people's stories are going to have this like really crucial point of what happened to them in 2020. And I am no different. This is a really long version of this story, but I do love sharing it, because I think not enough people feel capable of pivoting in their career. And if anything, my career is like pivot point after pivot point after pivot point, and then it comes full circle. So in 2020, the pandemic hit. I was the app engagement manager of this company, and my focus was the people. And people were really, really scared in March of 2020. And it just started feeling like my core values were not aligning anymore with this company. But it was also a really scary time to like quit your job.
Yeah.
Without knowing what was really going to happen in March. And so I hung on for about 6 more months. And then I realized like, this isn't worth it. My health, my mental health, everything was starting to just plummet because of how stressful this job had gotten. And so I really took it as a sign to explore what could be and go back to sort of my roots of being a leadership consultant. In August 2020, I started my business, and now 2 years later, I'm still doing it. And I'm coaching, speaking, teaching, all about leadership, which I just love so much. So that's the very long version of my career.
It's important to talk about those pivots, because a lot of us are trained as young. You have to get trained for one career and do that for the rest of your life, and you have to be loyal.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I had a similar story, like where I started pivoting different career pathways. So I'm in the same boat. I learned so much about you right now. I have like a million questions for you. So you said you started as a lawyer.
Yeah.
That in itself is super intense. A lot of people like crack during law school. So how was that?
It was good. When I say it was good, it was definitely hard. Anyone who goes into grad school or continuing education, it's hard, right? The level of work you have to do. I hated reading, which is literally like books are my love language. I don't think I read a book for like a full year after law school because I was so burnt out on it. But it was very hard, but it taught me to think critically in a way that I never would have gotten that education. I never can say like I regret it. I also met my husband there. So like I triply like cannot say I ever regretted law school because someone would be kind of offended. But what made it really fun for me was like I went to a smaller law school and we just had such a really good community, and we were able to like have fun. Like we went to events and went to like Twins games and like did all sorts of things that made it not so hard. And I think that's the piece I love is like when it comes to work, yeah, work sucks, but like what's like some of the fun things that we can add into it that just makes it worth it. And the people are so much of that. Like you don't have a friend at work, it's lonely. It can get really sad.
It does. It does. I think you always need to build a community wherever you're at.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Law school helped with your critical thinking skills. So how does that, do you think that also helped you with your current position right now?
Oh, absolutely. And I think critical thinking is a skill that literally everyone needs, but leaders for sure need to have that skill because so many things are thrown at you, whether it's the actual work that you're doing that's very specific and nuanced to your company, to trying to read the room and try to read, have the emotional intelligence to deal with your team and things like that. And I think when you have all this information, because we live in the world of information overload, that being able to sort through that and understand like, okay, what's a priority? Where also, like, I think a lot of people think that the law is black and white, and it is for a lot of times, but there's so much gray area. That's really where really successful leaders can live in that gray area because they see like where they have room to navigate and sort of like customize their approach to the individual. Blanket things just don't work all the time anymore because everyone has different goals, they have different priorities. Being able to navigate that gray helps the leader to say, okay, this person's coming in late, but I understand that they have a reason and I'm not going to like throw the rule book at them. I'm going to support them in doing that. Whereas I might have to come down a little harder on someone to do that, but they can do it in a way that's not going to be like, that's unfair. They're able to like think critically about the big picture.
I completely agree. I think critical thinking skills is a must, no matter what position you're on, even if you're at the bottom level or even the top level, and wherever you're at in the company. And I've never really heard of like you need to live in the gray area as a leader, but I think it's completely true. Nothing about leadership is black or white.
Yeah. Adam Grant has his whole like think again. And I think that's where people get stuck is when they get so entrenched in one particular thought. And then someone will come along and pull that out of the water. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't apply to this person. How do I navigate that? And especially like when the world changes so quickly that sometimes those rules are outdated or just don't simply apply in the same way, that have to be creative. You have to be able to think on your feet and you have to be able to sort of innovate as you're going. I think one of the most like tragic things about leadership is people who think about saying that it's always been done this way.
Yes.
So it's so frustrating. Like I hate that phrase so much, but it just shows like people who are resistant to change, they don't succeed as much, right? Like the people who are able to think on their feet and take in mass amounts of information and think about it and apply it and move forward quickly, those are the people that are the most successful.
You have to be adapted to change. Change is going to happen whether you want it or not. It's going to happen in a micro sense or in the macro sense, or it could just happen right, like the pandemic is a perfect example. Yeah. We had to adapt, and businesses that didn't, unfortunately, closed down. And even now, a lot of people don't want to go back in person or remote. And if you are forcing them to go back, they're seeing the loss of staff and resistance. I was reading articles that people would rather quit their job and go back into the hunting scene than go back in person.
Yeah. And that's really hard as a leader to think about the retention aspect, but also I think about the power that gives people to say, I have a choice in how my career goes, right? Like I can choose to work here. I can choose to work here. I can choose to work for myself. I don't think we've ever had that sort of like level of choice before. And in my opinion, it's super freeing for people to have sort of that mindset shift to say, like, I really am in control of my career right now.
I think we had somewhat of that, but not really. I think employers had everything, all the marbles in their pocket, but now it's a little bit more dispersed and we have a little bit more of that opportunity. I can talk about this topic forever. This is my favorite topic ever. And I'm trying to go back into topic, but just one more question into this like side conversation. I know that a lot of individuals are saying that the great resignation happened, and then they're talking about the great regret, where a lot of employers are now laying off people because they overhired and things like that. But what I'm seeing is that that's not true for every single employer. Of course, there's going to be some that are still in that hiring scarcity, because like I know for my personal employer, we I've had positions out for months and I haven't gotten a single resume. So
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on both of those?
Well, I did see a statistic, and I don't have the right statistic in my brain, so you can fact check me that I'm probably going to get this wrong, but it was like 26% or 25% of people regret resigning from their jobs in the Great Pandemic.
Mhm.
And someone tweeted the follow up, they're like, awesome. That means 75% of people don't regret it. I think it's like one of those things where like the cup is either half empty or half
Yes.
full, right? Maybe media and large companies want you to think like all these people regret it, but
Yes.
if the majority of people don't, maybe, just maybe, you might end up in the majority. And I think if you do regret it, that's okay. I think it's a great opportunity for you to sit and evaluate what you don't like about that position so that the next time you're on the lookout for that. And the next time you're
Exactly.
getting closer and closer and closer to finding sort of this like perfect place for you that I mean, for me, it always comes down to like core values. Like, where is the alignment for you?
Yes.
And if you can find a company that has core values and actually like acts them out, right? Doesn't just
Yeah,
say that these are our values and then not
exactly.
out, but like lives them out and that they align with yours. To me, like that's the unicorn of a career is when you can
Hmm.
find a company and yourself and you completely align. Like that's beautiful. But I feel like there's so many times people give up a little bit because they
Hmm.
don't have that fit and they get scared that they're never going to find it. And so it's easier for them to sit where they are and not try. And I mean, look at my career. It is full of pivots because I just think that's wild to me to like think that you're just not going to try. Like I hope that even if this doesn't work out, I have the courage to say, okay, what's next? Like
Hmm.
to figure out this didn't work or it worked for a little bit. And thankfully, like you thank it, right? Like you can live without regret and say, okay, yeah, that didn't end well, but it was still an amazing job. Like I think that of the job I had before, I still say it's my dream job. Yeah, I wish I could have worked there probably forever, but it just didn't work out. And that's okay. But I learned so much from it. But I also wasn't scared enough to leave or scared to not leave.
Unicorns are always on their feet, like yourself, and they're always looking for the next big thing. And how am I going to expand and trying to always have that upward curve? And that kind of goes in my next question is you do your coaching job, you shape leaders, you doing workshops, you teach courses, you just recently released a podcast. I feel like you're doing the most, but in a good way. So how do you stay organized? How do you juggle all that stuff without burning out yourself?
Well, I don't do it all. I think that's common misconception is I don't do it all. I'm probably behind on my paperwork. So the first is the misconception that I do it all. But why I can do all those things is because they genuinely light me up inside. Like I'm excited about those. And I also have this sort of realization that just because I commit to something right now doesn't mean I have to do it forever in my
Yes.
business. Like I
Mhm.
really take my business as an opportunity to one, express the growth mindset that I so believe in, and two, to try things. Like it's fun and exciting for me to try a new workshop, try a new class, see if it hits and see if people want that. And if they don't, like, that's okay. I'm going to learn something from it. And then I'm on to the next thing. I mean, I don't apply that in all areas of my life because, like, I love my husband. We're going to stay married for a long, long time. But having this sort of like container of my business to be able to make those decisions and to play to me is super fun. I am a manifesting generator.
Love
And one
it.
one of those things that like I had to come to realize is I have just like this plethora of ideas. Doesn't mean they're all good, but I have a ton of ideas. And what really bummed me out when I first started my business was people who were like, you need to niche down, you need
Yeah.
to like only do one thing and do that one thing really well. And I tried to do that for so long and it just didn't feel right. And then I had this like human design reading with this amazing woman. And she was like, you're a manifesting generator. Like it's always going to feel wrong to you to only do one thing. Like I love once I learned that, it opened me up to being, no, this is just who I am. I'm going to be able to pivot when I want. The same thing with my business. Yeah, I did consulting. Then I was like, oh, no, I really want to get my coaching certificate. And so I went and got really trained to be a coach and started pouring myself into that. Now I've got my podcast, try to do some more speaking. And I think it's good for me to try new things too.
Yeah.
Courage is definitely one of my core values, and it shows up differently. It shows up in my business of like putting myself out there, and like you are with a podcast, having people listen to you talk, but it also is the courage to listen, to say, okay, no, that doesn't sound right. Like that doesn't feel good to me. When do I need to say, I'm not going to do that?
You have to throw yourself out there. And there's a specific subset of individuals, I do believe, that need to do more than one thing. For myself, I cannot do one thing only. People always say, how do you live in the chaos? Either that could be a mental health issue in itself. Maybe I love the chaos and I thrive in the chaos, but that's just the way I am. I need to have 5 or 6 things going on at once in order for me to be successful. I'm doing my doctorate degree. I'm doing the podcast. I'm doing my regular job. I'm doing my consulting firm. That makes me happy. And it thrills me. And I see the same thing in you, where you're doing all of these things and you're shining in each one. And like I was telling you before, the first video that I saw of you were talking about a statistic that you said. And it just like, I stopped and I was like, okay, let me listen to the rest of what she has to say. I was like, oh, I really like that. So then I went into your profile and then on your TikTok and I just started going after. I was like binging your videos. Like, I feel like I know you because I was like watching so many of your videos. Like, I know her. Like, I've talked to her, well, I've listened to her.
That's the point though, right? Like, I feel like that's totally my style. So thank you so much. I want to like relate to people. I love talking to people and hearing about them and hearing my insights, but in a really kind of informal way.
Yeah, and you're very authentic. I think everything you say comes from the heart and you really do believe in what you're saying, which is, some people do it for the likes and the videos, but you're doing it really to, at least what I'm seeing is that you're doing it to really reach out to people and educate and show them that that whatever their dream may be is possible and they can become better, bigger, and better and be the new leaders of tomorrow. Out of everything that you do, what is your favorite one right now? Because I know sometimes it may change. You have different favorite babies at a single time. So right now, what's your favorite part
right now? Oh, that's so hard. That's like really hard question. I think it's the coaching. There's something super magical about having one-on-one relationship with someone who is being vulnerable with you, in that they're sharing sort of the hard, right? Whatever that might be, but they're sharing what's going on in their lives and sharing it's hard, but they're also wrapping that up in hope. They feel hopeful. And that's why they hire a coach, because they want to do better. They want to change. They want a different outcome. And you have sort of that one-on-one relationship with someone. It isn't even like something I say, it's just maybe a question that causes them to stop and think differently or flip a mindset, have that mindset shift. I mean, that is to me so magical, because I think everyone just needs to have that moment to like self-reflect and think, why do I think that? Do I think that? Like, is that true for me? And if not, what do I want to think? And that to me is where leaders have to get into like that nitty gritty piece of uncovering who they really are. And it's hard. I call it the heart work, because it's hard work to do the heart work. It's like figuring out, what do you believe in and who do you want to be? And if anything, like that to me is the ultimate question in our lives, is like figuring out who you are and who you are going to be, and then showing up and being that person. For me, that sort of that spark you can see is just, it's everything. It's just magic.
It is. Those aha moments are super beneficial, like in them and in you, and you're like, this is why I'm doing this. And I agree. Knowing who you are is one of the hardest things. I think a lot of people assume that it's just gonna come, but you have to put in the work. You have to be able to reflect. You have to sometimes, most of the time, you need somebody else to kind of guide you there. Somebody who's already found their purpose and get you there. I know with a lot of the clients that I see and everything, they say, what you're doing, I can do. And I was like, okay. I was like, you probably could, but there's certain steps that you have to do. You can't just cheat your way through it. And sometimes you need somebody that already knows and's been there to help you through. And I think that what you're doing is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I think the other piece of that is, a lot of times we have a hard time holding ourselves accountable.
Yeah.
And there's something like when you have a coach, like I had one client who was like, I had to do this because I knew I was meeting with you. And it wasn't that I was going to say, like you didn't do your homework. But it was different for her to have show up and say like, here's what I worked on. So that accountability piece, like I would say it's both like cheerleading and accountability. Like you're there to encourage people and empower them, but also be a layer of accountability that they can use with themselves.
They can know exactly what to do, but swallowing your own pill is really hard to do. I do consulting as well, and I help clients, and I tell them you have to do this and you have to do that, and that's the way that you're going to succeed. And then I'm like, why am I stuck? And my friends are like, weren't you just telling so and so that you need to do this? Isn't that the same issue that you're having? Why don't you just take your own advice? And I'm like, I get it, I guess.
Yeah. And that I think is fine line dichotomy of being both a coach and a consultant, right? A consultant is definitely giving advice and telling people there's a right way to do it if you want to go quickly or whatever it is. But a coach really believes like that individual has the answers within themselves and you are just asking questions to uncover them. I have sort of like this hybrid method of both. Consultative coaching is sort of like, I don't know, the blend of it, but it is nice to be able to share like, hey, this is what a best practice is. Do you think like you could apply that, or how would that look like in your life if you applied it? And it just kind of blends well together.
I agree. What are some barriers you constantly see where people don't progress anymore?
The biggest thing is people don't trust themselves.
Oh, okay.
The reason I was able to pivot or make these decisions that maybe went against what people thought I should do is because I really had this ingrained trust in myself that it would work out. And when someone doesn't trust themselves, you see it show up in a lack of confidence and a lack of self-awareness. They have sort of that weight of should weighs down on them because they don't see that it's possible for themselves, because they just don't believe in themselves to the extent that they could. If I looked at like my clients and the people that I've worked with, like overall, that tends to be the biggest thing that ties them all together. And I think that goes for leaders too. Talk about what are some of the challenges to leading. A lot of times it's just being like courageous to have a conversation with someone. And they're scared because they don't know what the answer is going to be. And so I think that lack of trust too, that they'll be able to navigate that in that moment, scares people, that there's going to be an unknown. They're going to say something and I'm not going to know how to respond. But yeah, that's going to for sure happen. And that's okay, because you have the answer. And I think if you then take that and say, I'm going to lead with compassion, I'm going to lead with heart, no matter what, that'll get you through. But then when you start second guessing yourself, and really anytime that doubt creeps in, it's a little bit of yourself saying, I don't trust myself.
I think that is a big one, and that's very deep. And
you know me, Jaime. I'm gonna ghost earrings on and go deep. I don't know.
Reminding me of an activity that I've done in the past with my staff. So I would put a box, and I would have this speech about certain things that you can learn and certain things that you can't. But I have a box in front of me, and inside this box is what you really need in order to be successful. There's going to be an image, and once you see that image, everything will become clear. The image of the person that you're going to see is the person you need to talk to. This is the person you need to trust. This is the person that you need to rely on, because this individual is going to be the one that's going to be like the most important for you in your life, that's going to help you succeed. And if you do not have that trust and you're not willing to risk it all for this individual, then you're never going to get where you want to go. So I give everybody a box, and then they're like, okay, it's probably gonna be like my mom, my dad, or my partner, whoever. And they open it, and it's a mirror, and they see themselves, and that they're like, oh my gosh, it's me all along. But you need, like you said, you need to be able to trust yourself. You need to make the risks for yourself. And if you're not willing to put it for you, nobody else is.
Yeah. I mean, that's the truth, right? Your tendency, especially for women, is to put other people first, right? And that's fine. That's great. We need that. But also, at what cost? What cost are you always putting yourself last? And it's not selfish to take care of yourself. You fly and they're like, put your oxygen mask on first before assisting others. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, is that we have to recognize, like, when we are whole, when we are healthy, when we are fulfilled, we're able to shine our light so much brighter on other people than when we are constantly fighting to patch up the holes in ourselves. You
Yeah.
just have to be able to take care of ourselves. And for so many of us, that means really understanding who we are and what makes us us.
You need to do the work. You can't successfully help other people unless you help yourself.
Yeah.
1,000%.
And it's hard. I mean, let's be really frank about this. It is not easy work. I mean, the hard work is the hard work. Like, it is hard, but nothing worth doing has ever been super easy. There's an element of toughness and grit that has to come from being able to do the hard stuff.
And the thing is that we get so used to seeing this Instagram picture of everyone that they made it. This person's successful. This person did it. But you don't see where they started from. Yeah. Oprah got rejected from her first job offer ever. And,
like more than one, like a lot of jobs. And it's Oprah.
Yes, exactly. And it's Oprah, and she's super successful. I think Morgan Freeman didn't get his first casting job until he was like in his 50s. So like these really popular individuals that you see successful, you're like, I wish I can be like them. They started where we're at now. Mm-hmm. They took a risk. They focus on themselves and they put the work in. And it's not you may not see it today. You may not see it tomorrow. You may not even see it next month or next year, but it will get there. You just have to do the work to get there.
In my 20s, would look at that and be like, oh my gosh, that's failing to not know what you need to be doing in your 20s. And now that I'm like confidently in my 30s, I'm like, I cannot wait to see what my 40s are going to look like. Maybe that is going to be what I'm like remembered for. Maybe that's going to be like this like epic, life-changing, impact-making change that's going to happen. And it may not be, but it's exciting to think that with age and wisdom comes a different perspective on life and the pressure that you feel to like have it all figured out.
I agree. And I think that gets you excited about living. I think a lot of people get fixated on like, I'm getting old. I'm getting like, my body's not functioning the way it used to. But with that, you get so much wiser. You get so much more experience. You have more tools on your belt to live life better than you could have like 10 years ago. It excites me, like you said, because you're like, I wonder what legacy I'm gonna have, or what impression I'm gonna be when I'm 40 or 50 or 60 or how long I live.
Absolutely. When I worked at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, it was really tough. I mean, we had people coming who had just lost a loved one or were survivor themselves or were actively going through treatment of cancer. And it really opened your eyes to what is beautiful about life. And it changed so much for me, just having that experience of working with an organization. But as I've gotten even older, I just keep thinking like, what a privilege it is to grow old. There are so many people who do not have that ability. And it's just, how do we not look at life and say like, this is so awesome. Yeah, there's tough parts, but like we get to go old. Every day is such a gift. And I think if we remember that a little bit more, it would show in our interactions with others.
My cycling instructor said something that just stuck with me, and it just resonated with what you said. You don't have to do this. You have the privilege to do this. And that can be applied to anything in your life. And just remember that. Like, we have the privilege of living. We have the privilege of doing what we're doing, of having that job, of opening up our own business, or just like being able to be here smiling, talking to each other.
Absolutely. Once you have that sort of like aha, you realize that you're not stuck at your crappy job, right? Mm-hmm. You have the choice. You have the privilege of living in a world where you have options.
Exactly.
And what are you going to do with those options? It's really on you.
Switching topics a little bit. So for the month of October, I introduced for spooky season the concept of the masked unicorn. So this is a unicorn that is not who they portray who they are. So in your opinion, what is an example of a masked unicorn?
Okay, so I think a masked unicorn would be someone who thinks they know who they are, but really is lacking in self-awareness.
Okay.
That, the person that you talk about and you're like, I cannot believe that they think that. Like, how do they not know, fill in the blank? Like, those people I think of as are masked unicorns. That for me, the foundation of leadership is self-awareness. Like, you have to know who you are. You have to know your values. You have to know, about your personality. You have to know so much about who you are and how you relate to others. And there are a lot of people out there who think that they are a certain way, but they really aren't, or they're being perceived by others in a way that's completely at odds with who they think they are. And so a lack of self-awareness, I think, is a mask that a unicorn could wear.
That's very interesting. And especially since the individual doesn't always necessarily know that
Yeah.
what they're doing is wrong. So I think with that, maybe in order to fix that, if they want to make a unicorn, like a true unicorn out of themselves, they need to do more reflecting.
Yeah, reflecting, and also I think being open to some feedback. There's some people who are like, I got it. I don't need any feedback. I know exactly what I'm doing. But that just shows like you don't. I think we all can be open to feedback and then reflecting on it, right? Like sitting with it and asking, like, is this true? Could this be true for them? And I think that's where maybe there's like, oh, okay, maybe there's something there that I can work with.
For our listeners who maybe have this type of mass unicorn as a leader,
Yeah.
what would you recommend for those individuals to do to kind of either work with them and like lead up, or what can they do to kind of navigate through those type of situations?
Yeah, I think having someone who has a lack of self-awareness can be really hard to lead up because they just don't see what you see. And so I think you can definitely try. I think you can people in the right direction. I think it's all about like those conversations that you are having with that person. But at the end of the day, like you do need to worry more about you and
Mm-hmm.
like your self-awareness and whether or not it's a fight worth fighting.
That
Like, I
makes
think, is it something that's worth your time and energy? Is this the leader you aspire to? I mean, that's the other thing. I think there's so many people who see like one style of leadership and then think
Mm-hmm.
that they have to emulate it. And
Yeah,
that's just not true at all. You can choose to be the type of leader you want to be. And just because they have a lack of self awareness doesn't mean you have to.
exactly. A thing that I consistently do when I talk to my staff is let's reflect together. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And I consistently tell them I am not perfect. And this is one of the biggest things that I think the flaws of human beings is that we assume that because people have a certain title, they're above human emotion, they're above human error, and they're
Yeah.
perfect, or they have to act a certain way. And I tell them I am not better nor worse than you just because I'm in this position. I
Yeah.
was I have the privilege of being in this position so that I can help you, teach you whatever I've learned and make you better, and hopefully have you be up here or even higher than me and teach me things back. And I think what you said is in order for you to be able to really know your style and know what you're doing, you need to be able to reflect and ask those hard questions because you're not going to like sometimes what they tell you. And my staff are brutally honest, and they're like, well, you do this, you do that. I don't like the way you do this. And I'm like, thanks for your feedback. Those were opinions, but okay.
You're like, I'm not ready for all this information, but thank you.
I was like, I said, pick one thing that you didn't.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to a client today about that, and they're like, how do you deal with like all this feedback? I'm like, well, if it's just like a one comment thing that maybe you don't need to worry about it. Like look for the patterns. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you're getting sort of that feedback from lots of people, I think that's sort of the red flag there for you that there might
Yeah.
be something there too. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, because you want people to see themselves how you see them. And I think that goes both ways too. Like when I am working with a client, I'm like, I want them to see how amazing they are and like see how like I see them. But sometimes that's really hard, right? Because you have all these like obstacles and baggage and everything that sometimes that's hard for you to see. And same thing with this concept of the masked unicorn, that sometimes they don't see themselves how everyone else sees themselves.
Yeah.
And it can be really frustrating because you're like, just think you could be like this amazing leader if you just recognize that maybe that's a challenge for you. Maybe that's a flaw that you're not looking at. And if you were able to just like recognize it and do something about it, I think people would, one, like you said, respect you even more because of just being able to relate to you, but also like you'd be able to utilize that then, right? Like you can use your weaknesses and change them into strengths or vice versa if you don't pay any attention to it.
In lieu of spooky season, what is the scariest life lesson that you've had to learn?
I really think the scariest thing for me was the first time I was faced with the opportunity to pivot and not knowing what would happen if I did, and also not knowing what would happen if I didn't. the first time it was when I was choosing which college to go to. Again, talk about like privileges of being able to be faced with this decision, but it felt so huge for like an 18-year-old to be like, where are you going to live for the next 4 years? Like, where are you going to go? Like, what are you going to be when you grow up? And it felt really big. And I come from a background where a lot of people from my college went to a very specific type of college. And I didn't want that. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to go away for college. I wanted to get out of my hometown, my home state, my home region. Like I wanted to go away. It was something I wrestled with for months. And because I was so afraid of doing what I felt was right, but what I was worried that people would say, like, ooh, what's that? Like, why are you doing that? That I spent so much time worrying about it instead of just trusting myself to say, nope, this is what I'm going to do. And if it doesn't work out, I can easily come home. But like, that was really scary. But I'm so glad that I went through with it and made the choice that was right for me, because I think it just set me up to make all the pivots that came after that. It reduced how scary it was each time I've done it, because I'm like, I can do this. I've done this before. You know, one of the things that I look back at my career, I've actually quit 2 jobs without having anything lined up. And I know that sounds super scary to people. And it was dumb the first time I did it. The second time I was like, oh, I've done this. It doesn't seem as scary because I trust myself to find something. But it's that fear of the unknown, I think, can be super scary until you tackle it. And then you realize like, it's not that bad.
It is super scary. It's really hard. A lot of 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 17-year-olds deal with that nowadays, where they're like, what am I going to do with my life? And there's such a big expectation that we need to know everything by that age.
Oh my gosh. Isn't it crazy? Like crazy to me to think that society puts that much pressure on children. Like
exactly. My 30s and I'm barely knowing what I want to do. So
yeah. Even if you find something new, why not try that? Like, I know that's just my experience that has like shaped how I feel about like the world and stuff. But I do think it's sort of sad that people don't have that like ability to say like, I trust myself enough to try something new or to take that risk of putting themselves out there, because it could be like the most magical thing, right? Like it could be the most like life-changing, life-giving thing to make that decision. But so many people hold themselves back from even making it. And to me, that's kind of sad.
You have to be okay with failure and being able to make mistakes. That's how you're going to learn. That's how you're going to thrive. You have to take that risk. If not, you're not going to, it's not living. You're just surviving at that instance.
Oh, totally. Totally.
We've talked a lot about unicorns and good qualities and others and the masked unicorns. So what makes you, in your opinion, a unicorn?
Oh, this question. This is like the toughest one. In my head, I'm like the pony from My Little Pony, that rainbow hair and sparkles. And no, I think what makes me a unicorn is that I have this spark inside of myself that I am uncompromisingly like unwilling to put out. Like I will do everything in my power to keep that spark going and then to share it with other people. It's sort of cliche about like candles of like lighting other people. I really feel like that spark inside of you is the thing that could inspire somebody else. And to me, that's super cool. I share my favorite quote all the time, and I love it so much. It's by, I think, Catherine of Siena. And it said, if you are what you should be, you will light the whole world on fire. Mm-hmm. And I just love that quote so much, because it really feels like that spark inside of me that makes me a unicorn is the spark that could light someone else's fire. Like that could help them burn it down, right? Like start this crazy fire, because all we need is more people to be who they are meant to be. And if I can help inspire someone to do that, to like tap into that hard work, then my life is made. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, I see that all the time, and you inspire me. I can already tell you right now. Like if there's at least one person right here, you inspire me.
I love it.
every time that I see your TikToks or your Instagrams or what you're doing, like I'm like, yes. And you don't even know how giddy I got when I saw you had a podcast. And I was like, yes, she got into the podcast game. I love it. I was like, I'm gonna be your first number one fan. I'm gonna listen to every single one. And you should have seen me when your first episode came out and you were talking about
Yes, like an alignment check.
yes, an alignment check.
Yeah.
I was over here with my notebook and I'm like doing, okay, I need to write these things down. I need to ask myself this. I need to do that. And I was doing it and I was like, I love it. And it was a great 2 episodes that you did at first. And then I thought the next one, and I'm loving it so far. So I'm really excited what you're going to come out.
Oh, that just means the world to me. And here's the thing, Jaime, even if you were like, I don't like it, I don't think I would care. Cause like I'm doing it. No, seriously, like I'm doing it because I'm like, I have something to say and I love TikTok because I can say a whole lot of stuff, but like, it's just not long enough. So I'm like, I need a platform. And even if no one listens to it, which I just love when people tell me that they are, but it's out there, right? Like it's out there. It's something that I'm putting together and saying, this is how I feel. This is how I think. And just maybe I'm going to find other people who believe in that too. And just maybe we're going to have this movement of people who want to truly lead from the heart. And just maybe if we have enough leaders who lead from the heart, things are going to be different. Like companies are going to look different. People are going to have a whole different level of like job satisfaction and life satisfaction. And companies are going to keep doing good because they're putting people first. Just maybe I have a tiny, tiny part in that. I'm so lucky. Like so lucky. So that's why I do it, because one, I like to talk, and two, even if no one does it, I'm going to put it out there. It'll be like a time capsule. Maybe in a million years, someone will be like, what is this?
And when you said it's so important, you have to do things not because you want people to like you. You have to do what you want to do as if nobody's watching or no one will ever watch you. Do it for your own joy. Do it for yourself, and know that you inspire yourself. And if somebody else listens to you and gets light out of that, then great. And if not, at least you put yourself out there and you have something, like you said, like there's going to be records of you even after, and people are going to be like, that was Alex Young. Like, yes.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's true. I mean, if you wait for other people to give you permission to be a certain way, I think you'll be waiting a very, very long time. And sometimes we just have to give ourselves permission to try new things or to do things for fun. This podcast, I love it, but it's not like making my business money. Yeah. It's not like I'm doing it all myself right now. For now, that's going to change, right? Because I have that belief in it. But like, sometimes we just do things because it feels good and we want to try something new and see what might happen.
That's what you got to do. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you happy. And that's what's going to motivate you to keep doing bigger and better things.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So talking about motivation, who motivates you? Who are your unicorns in your life?
Okay, I've got one grounded one and one crazy one. So my grounded one is my mother. Okay. She is the most compassionate person I know, but also with like a side of snark and funny and just she's my best friend. I just love her to pieces. So, but she's really taught me like that it's about the relationships you have with people that matter. And I mean, she could talk to a wall. I feel like I've learned to talk to a wall as well. And I think it's just a very, very good skill to have. My far out there unicorn is for sure Oprah. Like I just idolize that woman so much, from how she has created this career, but also like now I just love how she's like cultivated this community of like family and friends around her and is just like doing her thing. And I think that's so cool. So she is for sure a rock star unicorn. And so is my mom. And I'm very confident using them in the same sentence and comparing them.
I love that.
Unequal ground in my life.
I love that. We always have to have unicorns in our lives that help us, inspire us, and keep us going.
Yeah.
And if you can give one piece of advice that you want our listeners to leave with today, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to get to know yourself. Don't be afraid to dig deep and figure out who you are, because you're pretty dang special. And I think that the more people understand about themselves, just the better people they're going to be and the better leaders they're going to be, and face that fear head on.
I love that. I love that. So where can our listeners find you, and where can they follow your work and what you do?
Yes. Well, it's 2022. I'm everywhere. So you can find me on TikTok and Instagram. I have the same handle there. It's Alexandra Young _ co. On LinkedIn, you can search for me there. I have a website, alexandrayoung.co, where you can kind of get the kind of all the things right there. And I have a podcast called Brave and Purposeful Leadership, and it is on Apple and Spotify. So you can go search for me there. And send me a message and say hi, because I love talking with people.
She is such a delight, and I've enjoyed this interview so much. Thank you so much for giving me the privilege out of your busy schedule. And everybody, please follow her. Like I said, she is a joy to watch, and you'll get captivated from the beginning. But
thank you. Thank you. All this praise is like going to go to my head. It's so sweet. I just love I love it.
Job. That's my job.
You're the ultimate cheerleader.
I have to pump up my unicorns. That's the reason you're here. You have to make sure that you're great, and everybody else does too.
Oh, thank you. You're so sweet. But you are doing good work too. So keep it up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, thank you everyone for listening in. Until next week, I hope you all have a great day. Thanks again for listening to Finding the Unicorn in You. I would like to ask you to do 3 things for me. If you have enjoyed this episode, or if you are enjoying listening to this podcast, hit the subscribe button and share it with a friend. I have a lot of great guests and content that are coming up in the future, and I don't want you to miss a thing. 2, if you have any comments, suggestions, or feedback that you feel would make this podcast better or more engaging, or if you would like to be interviewed for a future episode, feel free to shoot me an email at raygozaconsulting@gmail.com. Lastly, if you like this podcast and would like to support it, we are accepting any donations to help sustain future episodes. There is a link in the description of this episode. Feel free to click it and to donate anything from a cent to your heart's content. All donations are truly appreciated. Thank you again, and see you next week for next week's show.